I am here on behalf of NASA's Neurodiversity Network, which is a project that I lead that is part of NASA's Science Activation Program. What is neurodiversity? It basically refers to the variation in cognitive functioning that people have. Everybody has a different brain and therefore different skills. People are usually classified as either neurotypical or neurodivergent, based on whether their cognitive functioning resembles that of most of the population or not. There are many different ways that one can be neurodivergent or neurodistinct, including autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and all the other things I have listed on this slide. NASA's Neurodiversity Network program focuses on working with autistic high school students to encourage them to go into college and major in a STEM field and someday work for NASA. A little note about language. Autism isn't something that a person has or that you're trapped inside or that you can separate from yourself. It's a way of being. It colors every experience, every sensation, and you can't separate the autism from the person. If you could, you wouldn't have the same person that you started with. The N3 program was inspired by my work with one of my autistic physics students, who I've now mentored for more than 10 years, through his junior college, into college, and now into graduate school in physics, supported by an NSF Graduate Research Fellowship. So I set out to learn more about neurodiversity and neurodivergence in order to help other students like him achieve their dreams of maybe someday being able to work for NASA. But everything that we do on the N3 program is founded on the principles of the autism self-advocacy movement. Nothing for us or about us without us. We include autistic people in the development of everything that we do on the N3 project, and as well as our internship program for autistic high school students that happens every summer. We are in year 4 of our program now, and this year's summer interns are just about to finish and present their projects starting on the Friday of the first week of August. So when people say that autism is a spectrum, what do they mean? Well, it's not just a one-dimensional spectrum like you might be thinking as a physicist or a planetary scientist, but there's a lot of different dimensions, and different people can have different strengths and different weaknesses among these different dimensions. For a really fun explanation, I would refer you to this Understanding the Spectrum, a comic strip explanation by Rebecca Burgess, which is where this figure was taken from. For example, some people may have excellent fine motor skills and very poor executive functioning. Some people may be super sensitive to touch and not that great at perceiving things, like, for example, other people's faces. So the most important thing to realize when you're working with autistic people or neurodivergent people is that everybody is different, and you can't really generalize to how this would play out. So I was asked to provide some tips for creating a more diverse works for encouraging neurodiversity in the workplace. And I just would like to make the global statement that supporting neurodivergent colleagues supports everyone. Just as you would do universal design for learning techniques as a teacher, perhaps thinking about a certain underserved population in your classes, you find out that when you switch your style to be more inclusive, that everybody in the classroom or in your work group flourishes as a result. However, barriers to successful employment really remain. Considering autistic adults with college degrees, only 15% are employed and 85% are unemployed or very underemployed. And the people who are employed and are seemingly doing well have generally been able to do that by masking, which means trying to make yourself act like you are a neurotypical person, even when you are not. And that takes a lot of internal stress. It creates a lot of anxiety, leads to burnout. It means that people are constantly shielding part of themselves and not being able to contribute with their full selves. And so it's much better if you can make an environment where people feel comfortable not being masked while they're at work. Ways that you can reduce misunderstandings so that people will feel more comfortable You have to be very direct and set parameters. You need to communicate via more than one method. For example, if you're giving someone verbal instructions, follow it up with written instructions, and even better, if you can add some images. On a meeting like this, live captioning would be good. And also just chunking, breaking information down into smaller chunks so that you are careful not to overwhelm the person or your teammates. How does one create space for a neurodiverse team? Well, it's good to understand what your organization's policies are and speak with your human resources department when you're having issues or when you don't exactly know what to do. Being flexible and asking questions is also important. When it comes to actually creating the team, one thing that autistic people in general are pretty bad at is interviewing, especially with questions that they've never seen before. So you might consider providing the questions ahead of time. You might consider looking at what they can actually do and not the way they're communicating with you, since communication may be a weakness. And it's also important to know what to do if someone discloses their neurodivergence to you. For example, do not say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're autistic," or "You don't look autistic," or "I never would have known, you hide it really well. No wonder you're so good at math. Why aren't you better at math?" Or "I have a close relative who's on the spectrum." Don't talk about Temple Grandin. Don't talk about Sheldon Cooper, who's probably the most famous fake example of an autistic person. The group Autism Speaks, not very popular within the autism self community. And it's really also not okay to say we're all a little autistic, because we're actually not. If you're interested in learning more about N3, I would invite you to check out the final presentations from our first 3 years of internships. They're truly amazing. We have rising high school seniors who are doing projects that are as good or better than 2/3 of my graduating college physics senior majors. We've developed some curriculum with input from autistic teachers or teachers of autistic students, actually both, that include our astronomy from home discovery activities, where people can learn how to get data with our robotic telescope GORT and make their own experiments. We also have a solar science curriculum that's now online that we debuted in time for the April 24 total solar eclipse. And if you're interested in mentoring an intern or presenting about your science to our interns at a monthly meeting, please feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you.